Our scripture reading today comes from Luke chapter 12, verse 49 through 56. Jesus, the cause of division. I have come to cast fire upon the earth, and how I wish it were already ablaze. I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and what constraint am I under until it is completed? Do you think that I have come to bring peace to the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, 5 in one household will be divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. They will be divided. Father against son and son against father, mother against daughter and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. He also said to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, you immediately say, it's going to rain, and so it happens. And when you see the south wind blowing, you say, there will be a scorching heat, and it happens. You hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time? Please bless the reading and hearing of these words.
Amen. I need you to know that I didn't pick that. That is this morning's lectionary text reading. I did not choose that passage. We planned to do this Lord of the Rings sermon series, but we also planned to use the lectionary texts for the duration. So it just kind of went along with what we're doing today, which is talking about the rings of power. They say that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? That was some English lord that's not famous for anything else, but he wrote that in a letter at one point. And I think at the Lord of the Rings, Tolkien wrote for entertainment and adventure. He was really adamant that this is just a story and it's something fun, but the meaning of them is pretty clear. And at its heart, Lord of the Rings, I think, is about power. It's about who gets it and who wants it, who deserves it and who uses it, what power is capable of doing when it is in the wrong hands, what it looks like when it is in the right hands, what power could do to the person who wields it. And there's all sorts of different stories of power and power dynamics in the Lord of the Rings, and I can't talk about them all. So it all comes down to these rings. This is our big bad Sauron, dark wizard, chief lieutenant, successor of the evil god. Think that Sauron is basically an angel to the gods of this world. So there's a level of gods up here, and they all have assistants, the hosts, the angels. Sauron is on the same cosmic level as Gandalf. They're on the same level, although sometimes Gandalf forgets that he actually is on that level, and then remembers at the end. But Sauron wants to take over the world. He wants to rule the world. That's what bad guys do, right? That's what they want to do. And so after the first war that they fought, to defeat this Morgoth, this evil god, Sauron moved into the world as his successor. He disguised himself and he deceived the people of Middle-earth, particularly the elves, to make these rings out of a newly discovered element, a magical cosmic element called mithril. Mithril and gold. So he made, as we have read already this morning, he made the 3 rings for the leaders of the elves. He made 5 rings for the leaders of the dwarves, and he made 9 rings for the leaders of the men, of the humans. He disguised himself and he tricked all of these leaders with promises that these rings would help them build up their kingdoms and prosper and advance and all of those things that the powerful tell people that is going to happen. But then on his own, he made another ring, and that ring controlled all of the other rings. There's a poem about it because it's Tolkien, and of course there is, right? 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bind them all, and to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. We've also heard already this morning that the first time they fought Sauron, the elves hid their rings when they found out that they were evil. The dwarves destroyed or lost their rings, mostly in battles with dragons, as they dug under the mountains and found evil stuff underneath the earth. Their rings were lost or destroyed. The 9 humans were absolutely, completely corrupted by the rings on their fingers, and they became the ring wraiths, the dark knights of Sauron. So this king that we heard about already, the king of the human kingdom of Gondor, Isildur, he was in this great big battle, and he cut the hand of Sauron, and his ring fell. And Isildur found it. Isildur had a chance in the first place to destroy the ring 2,500 years before the action of our story. But at the last moment, the temptation of the power in the ring overcame him, and he took it and took off. And then, as we've already heard, the ring betrayed Isildur. It has a little bit of a will of its own. And the ring falls into a great river and is lost for another 1,000 years. And that's this ring that we find in the beginning of the Lord, in the middle of the Hobbit, that then goes to Frodo. And yes, all of those rings have names in all of the languages of Middle-earth, and I'm not going to recite them all. The one ring has an effect on anybody it's around, on anybody who comes close to it, on anybody who desires it. The ring wraiths can feel it working in the world all the time. It's like this, but it's probably the most complete story of the power of the ring is told in the tragedy of Smeagol. Smeagol wasn't much different from a hobbit once. His people were river folk. And while fishing in the river, his cousin Deagle found the ring at the bottom in the silt and the sand in the riverbed. Immediately upon seeing it, Smeagol, he wants it, and he tries to take it from his cousin Deagle. He tries to claim that it's his birthday, and so Deagle should give him the ring because it's his birthday. We're unclear still whether it was actually Smeagol's birthday. I figure his cousin would know, right? But anyway, ultimately, they fight over the ring, and Smeagol kills his cousin Deagle to take the ring from him. And the power of the ring captivates Smeagol, and it entrances him. And initially, of course, it feels good. He feels stronger than he ever has. It makes Smeagol feel special and purposeful. But then the malevolence of Sauron in the ring goes to work on Smeagol. And what happens is he becomes desperately jealous and protective of the ring. He leaves his community for fear of it being stolen by someone in his town. He never uses it again for fear of someone finding out and seeing. So he has this ring of power, but he refuses to use the power in it because he's so scared of someone taking the ring of power, right? He retreats to the Misty Mountains, and the more he wears the ring, has the ring in his possession, the more it changes him. He loses all his desire for good things. He loses his desire for sunlight and clean air, and he craves darkness. His body withers away until he's all eyes and bones and limbs. For 500 years, the ring works on Smeagol until he drains away and he becomes the cave-dwelling creature Gollum. Gollum is named such because of for the sound he makes when he clears his throat, which, by the way, was a nickname that I got when I was a baby because of the sound my mom made when she cleared her throat that never happened before I was born. So, I wasn't going to say that this morning, but my mom is here today. So apparently, my pregnancy, I was called Goober for a really long time. After the sound my mom had to make during pregnancy to clear her throat, kind of like Gollum. So Gollum is absolutely obsessed with holding, protecting the ring, and the metaphor is clear here. What power can do to a person, what absolute power can do to a person. The power provided by the ring, while enticing and enthralling, drained away the soul of Smeagol until eventually the only thing he cared about was holding on to the ring, keeping it safe and in his possession. And he'd do anything to do that. He would justify anything to keep the ring, because power corrupts. So this isn't exactly golden rule Jesus this morning. This isn't Christmas Eve Jesus that we love. This isn't the Prince of Peace. The Gospel of Luke says at one point towards the middle that Jesus turns his face towards Jerusalem. And after Jesus turns his face towards Jerusalem, his tone changes a little bit. The Jesus we know and love is still around, but every once in a while, the frustration of his students just really not getting what is going on and what this movement means comes out, especially in chapter 12 of the Gospel of Luke. And the longer his students seem to not understand what's going on, the more frustrated Jesus seems to get. So here Jesus says, look, you know when it's going to rain by the clouds, and you know when it's going to be hot by the wind. Do you not see what's happening around us? What we're doing here is going to make some people mad. Like anything else in the Bible, this passage has been used by people to justify their actions. When Jesus says, I have come to bring fire on the earth, if you are a violent person and you want to do violence, you can use that passage to say Jesus said it was okay. If you want to be the kind of person who abandons your child because they have expressed to you that they have an identity or an expression or an understanding of themselves that is different than what you expected, you can find in this passage, Jesus said, there's going to be division between father and son. The great lie being that we would do that violence anyway without the justification of this verse. We would abandon our child and throw them out on the streets anyway. We just happen to find this passage and Jesus says it's okay. They say and do horrible things to people in the name of themselves, and then they claim that the sword of Jesus is on their side. And you can do that with this passage, of course, only if you ignore everything else Jesus ever said or did. Jesus is telling his disciples, his students, and the crowd that this message that we are bringing to this world is a threat to people in power. And they will respond when threatened. Loving others, loving our enemies, means seeing them as full human beings. And we've built our power and our wealth and our status around not seeing them as full human beings. So the more obsessed we are with that power, the more we're willing to do to protect it. Being inclusive is divisive. It leaves people out. The exclusive. Being inclusive means that we are drawing a line in the sand and saying, if you're still on that side of the line, that's not us anymore. I mean, you're welcome here. You're just not going to like me very much. Because I'm not going to stop talking about it. It looks like division when unity means everybody be like me to you. So it looks like division. If a person is intent upon hating people and Jesus comes along and says, hey, you have to love and serve everyone equally, no matter what, especially the ones that you hate, and especially the ones that this world leaves behind, that message is going to piss you off. The gospel of Jesus Christ is fire to a world of bigotry and racism and sexism and selfishness and greed and power. The gospel of Jesus, that God is love, that God is absolute love, that Jesus lived and died and lived again so that everyone could have new life and abundant life and full life in faith through him, is a threat to power because it gives power to the powerless. It gives voice to the voiceless. So much so that the people who have the power are forced to change the gospel message of Jesus Christ to argue for their power. You know what I mean? Like they know they can't ignore it. It's too big. The Bible is too big for them to ignore it, so they have to change it. They have to change what Jesus said. The love of God in Jesus Christ is such a direct threat to everything that they are about, that they know they can't fight it, they know they can't ignore it, so they stole it, they distorted it, they corrupted it, and then they present it back to us in a ways that keeps them on top and protects their power and doesn't change anything. I know this Jesus makes us uncomfortable, and can't we all just get along and all of that stuff? Here's what I keep going back to. If the kingdom of heaven means that the wolf and the lamb are going to lie down together, then the wolf has to stop eating lambs. That's a requirement for the king. The lamb doesn't change. The lamb doesn't have to do anything. The wolf has to transform. And until the wolf stops eating lambs, they are not welcome in the kingdom. They are excluded. If you are a wolf, that's divisive. That's not loving. That's not tolerant, which is what intolerant people say to tolerant people, because we don't accept their racism in our circles, so they accuse us of being intolerant. That's not how that works. The wolf has to stop eating lambs. For 1,500 years, our faith has been corrupted by power. I think the day we became the Holy Roman Empire and not the Christian movement in Rome, since that day we've been obsessed with power. First it was the church, right? And then the Protestant church changed the culture and changed how people lived their lives and took over in this puritanical sense of control and power. So we have this institutionalized, commercialized, religious behemoth of Christianity that is obsessed with their ring of power. Some of it has been political power and the rise of the religious right. Some of it has been economic power and the absolute astronomical wealth of the Catholic Church and the Mormon faith. Astronomical. And you don't get that much money without hurting people. Some of it is cultural power, but and if power corrupts, what does that say about the church these days? And obviously we see it in the world happening every day. Small-minded, short-sighted people obsessed with any kind of power or authority that they get. They go to extreme and destructive and violent lengths anytime that little bit of power is threatened, so that they can hold on. It corrupts them. From Smeagol to Gollum. And whenever it is threatened, whenever it is ignored, that's the worst part for them. If they come to a place and people say, "But I don't recognize your authority," that's the worst thing for them to hear. But they will lash out, and usually, typically, on the weakest possible target that they can find. This is a battle of good and evil. Jesus' message of love and grace and compassion and empathy and selfishness and all of the selflessness, all of the other virtues in the gospel, they draw a line in the sand. A follower of Jesus Christ is compassionate to everyone. And if you are not compassionate to everyone, then you must not be a follower of Jesus Christ. Everybody means everybody, or it means nothing. And that upsets the balance of the status quo. And if you are benefiting from the status quo, like most of us in this room are, then upsetting that balance is disruptive and destructive. And it can feel very much like an attack to us. Because people see equality as an attack when they've benefited from inequality for so long. So, Lord of the Rings sets up power. Power over versus power with. Power alongside. Power together. We We think about the power of, it's Sauron on the top, and it's everybody doing what Sauron says and exactly what Sauron, he doesn't care. He will murder and destroy and torture anybody in his own crew, in his own group, if they don't do what he says. Power over versus building power together. And any kind of power that places a person or a person above any other person or persons is corrupted power and corrupting power. But the power of this Christian movement, the power of Jesus, the power of actual community, the power of an archway with a keystone on top, is that they are supporting one another. That it is not top down, it is out. The power of the fellowship of the ring is built wide, not tall. In other words, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. It's not Tolkien, that's Hendricks. Amen.